Before we begin today's video, I want to give a big shout out and thanks to the entire Bulba Garden community, as a lot of the information in this video was collected and provided by them. So please, check them out and subscribe while you're there. With that being said, let's begin. There is a Pokemon TCG set that you've probably never heard of, and it's because of how scattered the release of each card was in Japan and how the set was torn apart by Wizards of the Coast in the US. Now, what set am I talking about? Well, it's the GameBoy set, and it all started on December 18th, 1998, when the Pokemon trading card game for the Game Boy Color was released in Japan. Copies of the game included this Dragonite, which is illustrated by Ken Sugimori, featuring the GB or Game Boy symbol as the expansion logo. Also, Dragonite's ability, Healing Wind, was quite impressive for its time, as it allowed for players to remove up to 20 damage from each of their Pokemon when Dragonite came into play. Dragonite could also use Slam, which you would flip 2 coins, and Dragonite would deal 30 damage times the number of heads to your opponent's active Pokemon. Unfortunately, this card would not see an English release, as copies of the game outside of Japan would include a variant of this Meowth, which was included inside of the February 1999 issue of Coro Comic. The English Wizards of the Coast version of this Meowth featured the GB symbol inside of the illustration box, and a Wizards of the Coast promo star where the GB symbol once was. This slight change would mark the beginning of WOTC killing off the Game Boy set in the West. And it may come as a surprise, but there is a third version of this card that was handed out for free during the JR West Rally in 2000. Participants of the rally were able to get a non-holofoil copy of the card featuring English text by going from train stop to train stop collecting stamps between July 20th and August 27th, 2000. Next up is this Venusaur, which is illustrated by Ken Sugimori and was first released inside of the Japanese Pokemon Card GB official guidebook in January of 1999. And was later released in English with the GB symbol removed as a Wizards of the Coast promo inside of the Pokemon Trading Card Game official Nintendo Player's Guide during spring of 2000. And even though Venusaur was legal to play during the 2001 through 2002 modified format, Venusaur was unplayable due to Base Set and Base Set 2 getting axed by rotation, which the only other way to play Venusaur was through Brock's Ninetales using its Shapeshifter ability. But even then, Venusaur was still unplayable, as the Shapeshifter ability prevented the player from using Venusaur's Solar Power ability, which was the main reason why you would want to use Venusaur in the first place, as it removed all status conditions from your active Pokemon every turn. Now, this issue was resolved when the Legendary Collection was released on May 24, 2002, but Venusaur got rotated out shortly after on August 3, 2002. On March 1st, 2001, the 10th volume of Pokemon Trainers magazine included 2 cards, Dark Ivysaur and Dark Venusaur. Both are illustrated by Shinichi Yoshida, and these cards were released together as a promotion for the upcoming sequel titled GB2, The Invasion of Team Great Rocket, which is sometimes referred to as Here Comes Team Great Rocket. Regardless of the title, these cards were no joke, as Ivysaur's Vine Pull ability allowed the player to choose one of their opponent's benched Pokemon and switch it with their active Pokemon when Ivysaur retreats. Ivysaur can also use Fury Strikes, which distributes 30 damage amongst your opponent's Pokemon based on their choice. Now, Venusaur's Horrid Pollen attack applies dual status conditions while dealing 30 damage. How it works is that the player flips 2 coins, and based on the combination of heads, the opponent's active Pokemon is one of 3 combinations: Asleep in Poison, Confused in Poison, or Paralyzed in Poison. Fortunately, these cards would get reprinted as part of the Japanese web expansion and in the US as part of the Best of Game collection. The Invasion of Team Great Rocket was released on March 28, 2001, and copies of the game included 2 physical cards. One, Great Rocket's Mewtwo, which was illustrated by Shinichi Yoshida and could be obtained in-game by defeating the leader of Team Great Rocket. And the second card was this Lugia, which was illustrated by Ken Sugimori. A copy of the card could be obtained in-game via Card Pop which is a two-player feature that utilized the Game Boy Color's infrared sensor and would generate a random card for each player. Now, Great Rocket's Mewtwo has a Pokemon power called Dark Wave, which gives your active Pokemon, with Dark in its name, up to 20 plus attack based on the results of flipping 2 coins. Great Rocket's Mewtwo also has an attack titled Dark Amplification that allows the player to flip multiple coins equal to their bench Pokemon with Dark in their name. They then deal 20 damage plus an additional 20 damage times the number of heads. As for Lugia, the player flips 2 coins and does 20 damage plus 20 damage times the number of heads. Now, unfortunately, GB2 Here Comes Team Great Rocket, or The Invasion of Team Great Rocket, would never see a release outside of Japan, which many have speculated that the reason why was due to how long it would take to localize the game for other regions in combination with the release of the Game Boy Advance, as Nintendo wanted its customers to focus on games for its new hardware. This Dark Firo, which was illustrated by Sumiyoshi Kazuki, is the last card in the Game Boy set and was included with copies of Pokemon Card GB2 Official Guidebook that was released in 2001 and was prohibited from tournament use, likely due to its moveset, Fly High and Drill Dive. Fly High costs 1 energy and doubles the base attack of Firo's Drill Dive, which on its own hits for 40, meaning for 2 energy, Dark Firo can hit for 80, which at the time would one-shot most Pokemon in the meta. Now let's go over the abandoned cards in this set. On February 18, 2000, Media Factory and Creatures Inc. unveiled 15 additional Game Boy cards that were created and meant to be distributed, but never printed. These cards can be found on pages 145 and 146 of the Pokemon Card Official Book 2000, which is commonly known as the Silver Bible. And although these cards were never officially printed with the GB symbol, many of them were modified and released in later sets, such as this Tangela and Electrode, which were both made a part of the web series. This Ninetales and Jolteon had their art reused in Gym Challenge, as well as this Jigglypuff that had its art modified and reused. Both Magnemite and Moltres had their art reused in Gym Heroes, while this Mew artwork is a modified version of Mew from Japanese Fossil, which the US received as a Wizards of the Coast promo. Now, unfortunately, Pidgeot, Ditto, Marowak, Articuno, Zapdos, Flareon, and Vaporeon would be lost to time. So if anyone is able to find these illustrations anywhere else, please let me know. Now, despite there being no hard evidence as to why these cards were never printed, one could speculate that Creatures and Media Factory had to shift their focus onto more important sets and promos, as the time frame that these cards would have been printed would be during the peak of the initial Pokemon craze during the late 90s and early 2000s. And in regards to the entire set, after the Game Boy Advance released, there was no reason for Pokemon, Creatures, or even Nintendo to carry on with this set, as it promoted games for a now end-of-life console. But that's all I've got for now. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and as always, I will catch all of you Slowbros and Ho-Ohs later. Bye.